There's been intense debate on traditional and social media about the rise in the number of police fatal shootings since the start of the year compared to the corresponding period in 2024. There are many Jamaicans who cheer on the police every time there's a report that a criminal suspect has been taken on. But at the same time, groups like Jamaicans for Justice and Indicom are saying that there's nothing to cheer about because it is very likely that young Jamaicans, civilians, are being taken out and not being given an opportunity to face a judge and to prosecute their case. Where do you stand on this issue of police fatal shootings, and how nuanced is the conversation? How nuanced should those arguments be in the end? I have that conversation today with the senior strategist in the Jamaica Constabulary Force and one of the most prominent clergymen in the country on this day. Let's start the story. Now, of course, the police take operational instructions from the Police High Command, although the Prime Minister's declaration that when the police go for criminal suspects, those suspects have two options. They have the option of coming quietly and going on to meet a judge, or they can meet their maker. The police seem to be operating under a new direction, not directly instructed by the Prime Minister, but operating in the spirit of the Prime Minister's words. And so there have been several, at last count, maybe about 54, putting it conservatively, the number of police fatal killings since the start of the year, almost a situation now where there's at least one a day. And that has the public talking about which side they're on. People have taken sides and formed sides in this debate. And just for perspective, as we discuss this issue on Lead Story today, what's the situation as it relates to the number of police fatal killings and how that compares to a corresponding period in previous years under review?
A number of police killings across Jamaica has raised significant concern, as reports indicate 53 individuals have died at the hands of law enforcement since the start of the year. The figures highlight ongoing tensions between the police and alleged criminals in various communities and have sparked national debates about police accountability, the use of force, and the need for reform. According to data released by the Independent Commission of Investigations Indicom, the majority of deaths occurred during encounters involving armed suspects or alleged confrontations. In light of the circumstances, National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang acknowledged the concerns, noting it is unlikely that the police can be met with force and not respond. Similarly, Commissioner of Police Dr. Kevin Blake. Critics argue that the current approach may be exacerbating distrust, which in turn hampers efforts to address the root causes of crime. Human rights organizations continue to call for the use of body-worn cameras and warn that if this trend continues, Jamaica will record up to 250 fatalities at the hands of the security forces by year-end. So, what should be done? Are the police at liberty to exercise equal force if and when met with confrontation? Or should there be training to handle these situations without the loss of lives? Who should decide on upholding human rights while addressing public safety concerns? Is vengeance really the Lord's? We discuss on Lead Story. Courtney Lewis for Lead Story.
After the break, I turn to the chairman of the Jamaica Umbrella Group of Churches. Welcome back to Lead Story. Bishop Dr. Michael Smith, Justice of the Peace and Senior Pastor at the Kingdom Seekers Ministries. He's also the man at the helm of the Jamaica umbrella groups of churches, and he joins me on Lead Story this evening. Good evening, Bishop.
Thank you for having me, George.
All right, listen. A lot of people believe, given the crime situation in the country and how criminals have caused Jamaicans to have a heightened sense of insecurity, the fear of crime very high. They say that, look, even if a man committed a crime 2 years ago with a gun, murdered somebody, and he has kept himself away from trouble since that time, but the fact of him murdering somebody remains. And if the police find out through intelligence that he is the suspect in that murder, and they go to him 3 years later and confront him without his gun, the police have a right to take him out. There are many people who believe that because they say they are tired of the impunity with which criminals operate. Is it safe for a society to have many of its citizens feeling and believing that way?
Well, I don't know if there are many of the citizens who feel that way.
Well, as a journalist, I can tell you, yes, when I interact with them, that's a sentiment reflected whenever the issue of police fatal killings come up.
In my interactions,
yes,
as a pastor,
yes,
I would not be of that same opinion. Mm-hmm. But let me just say this. As the church, we are clear, we believe in righteousness and godliness. Mm-hmm. And so we would want to believe that the police would do their job in the best way that they can. Just like in any, in our society, any sphere that they operating, you know, you have the business community, you have the medical community, you have all these other spheres. If it seems as if there's something wrong in any one of them, of which the police is just one of these many different areas in our society, then you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't bash that. You try to fix it. And so I believe that if there's a perceived problem with the police force, if there is, it's not for us to say that, because we have the various bodies. We have the courts to do that. Yes. We have Indicom and all of that. But I believe the police must be given the way to do their job. Everybody has a job to do, and they must be given that.
I'm happy you said that, because what I'd like to suggest to put on the table early, if you go back to your days as a lad, the nature of crime is markedly different from it is now. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, we have heavily armed gunmen coordinating an attack on a cash machine that is staffed, that is peopled by men with weapons, but they are banking on their superior power and the element of surprise to overwhelm those with weapons. So they're attacking people with weapons, which never used to happen before. Yeah. Yeah. Now you have gunmen willing to trade bullets with the police and flaunting, well, not flaunting, showing off on social media the firepower at their disposal. So in a circumstance, Bishop, when a police unit goes for such an individual who's a criminal suspect and who models their firearm on social media, what responsibility does the police have to meet aggression with something that preserves the life of that criminal suspect as a first course of action?
Well, let me say this. Police are human beings, and I'm not the spokesman for the police. Yes. I'm a clergyman.
Yes, sir.
And so they are human beings. And it's amazing, because a lot of the people who might want to have an opinion of the police and say, well, they could do things differently, they have never been under fire. They don't know what it feels like to have bullets whizzing past your ears. Yes. I do. As a clergyman with my church in the heart of the inner city, yes, I know what it is. And so I know what it is for these policemen to basically put their lives on the line. Every day they go out there. Yes. Now you will say that they're being paid for that. Yes. But let's remember the human element. Yes. And it's easy to point fingers and say all that you want to say if you've never been in their shoes.
Let me ask the question that most people would have asked at the top. Your reaction to news that 54, last count, maybe 55, members of the public, criminal suspects in the main, have been cut down in confrontations with the police since the start of the year. A record number relative to last year.
This 55, is it you're talking about gunmen or members of the...
Criminal suspects, the police
Criminal
say.
suspects.
Yes,
All right, let's clear that up.
Yes.
Criminal suspects. Well, I would want to say if that's the figure, then that's the figure. But we can't take away from the police force that they have a right to preserve their life. And every time they go out, and if that is the case, you must remember the police force, and again, I'm not the spokesman for the police force, but they are more trained now.
Yes.
They have become more sophisticated.
Yes.
In terms of their intelligence gathering and the way they go about things, and I can attest to that. I've been in the inner city for 25 years. I've seen the progression, and I can tell you they've come a long way.
Yes.
Probably not where we want them to be,
yes,
but thank God they're not where they used to be.
Yes.
And so it may be a matter of that, but...
And so it's not something that's causing you to lose sleep. It's not something that busies your contemplation, the number of these criminal suspects who the police say meet their end
then
in
you would have to let the experts tell you why that is.
Yes.
I am not the one to crunch the figures. I'm not the one to tell you what that means. But then the experts can tell you why there is that increase and the reasons for it.
Within the body of your congregation,
Yes.
Bishop, you, of course, feel the pulse of the people all the time. Are your congregants troubled by this, or in some way, are they cheering on the police in these instances?
Well, I wouldn't want to use that stronger word, cheering them on. But I will tell you this, that the members of the communities that I serve, they feel, the majority of them, you know, there are elements within the communities, and you know the old saying, one bad apple spoils the whole bunch. But the majority of the people in the community are law-abiding citizens. They are good people. And they feel safer when there's a police presence within their communities. They do. There may be the odd ones who would not want that for whatever reason, but for the most part, most of my congregation, they feel at ease when there's a police presence.
And more to the point, the issue of police fatal shootings, I'm just testing again. Is this a concern raised by your congregants, or are they seeing it for what it is? Gunmen don't want to comply with police directives, to come with them, get cut down when they resist. Tough luck.
Well, you said it at the onset of this discussion. They have become bolder. They have become, I'm using your words, flaunting, almost flaunting. Now, God is a God. Let me put a spiritual perspective on it, because you did invite me as a clergyman.
For sure, sir.
God is a God of order. And sin is a transgression of the law, basically. And so wherever you find that there is lawlessness, then it's sin. And so we, as the church, we abhor sin. And we would want to say to those elements in the society that are hell-bent on producing violence, these violent acts, they need to think again.
Yeah.
That is what I would say.
Excellent, excellent. Burning Spears sang many years ago, throw down your arms and come. And that's simply the message that a bishop is transmitting today. Seek out a clergyman, seek some counsel if you are in trouble with the law, and they can help you to go in safely. But if you raise your weapons against the police, then you have to accept the fate at the end of it all. This is Lead Story. Break time. Back with more after this.
Over the years, what I have known is that when police is doing shooting, that's the time when citizens tend to be up front. But when criminals are doing, they're hiding.
Bring them in. I'm going to eat taxpayer money, man. And get fat in there. And come kill again.
Is that you have the law, so you're supposed to carry in people and make the law do it, because they can't just kill people.
I mean, at the end of the day, the idea is to preserve life, not to take it. And, you know, justice has to prevail, and whatever means they need to do to make sure that even though these are suspected criminals, they have not been convicted, they still need to use some type of tactic or something. Perhaps it requires training, additional training, or something, I don't know. But it is really frightening what is going on.
The commander of police need to put something in place to slow down that rate, because right now that amount of killing is too much. Even though you are saying that it is justified killing whereby it's shootout, but who has any proof of that? The person who gets shot in most cases are the person who is dead. The police is very much out there, and they are the same one who are giving the reports, and they're not telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
The views there of members of the public to the fact of 50+ police fatal shootings since the start of the year. The police say fatal confrontations with criminal suspects ending in 50+ of them meeting their maker since the start of the year, and that's a significant increase over the numbers recorded over the corresponding period in 2024. Senior communications strategist in the Jamaica Constabulary Force, Senior Superintendent Dennis Brooks, is with me this afternoon. Welcome, SSP Brooks.
Greetings, and to your viewers.
I want to put it to you this way. A report elsewhere quoting playing an audio clip of a man who says he's the father of Rashawn Patterson, the man on a murder charge, out on bail on a murder charge for the murder of a social media influencer, said, as he wailed, that the police didn't even give his son a chance to rise up. When you hear that, a lot of people say, see, the police were intemperate, they used excessive force without any consideration for these suspects. As a policeman, how do you process that?
I take a moment to appreciate that he's grieving because regardless of the fact that your son may be a monster to some, he's just your son to you. But I really don't have much time for the argument because there's this notion of him never even rise up. When I heard it, I thought, I know what him rise up mean in my understanding. And I don't know if you think that the police are supposed to give you a chance to reach for your firearm. If you're moving for it, and if we can see it and you're moving in the direction of it, you're posing a lethal threat, right? If you are moving to your waist, you're potentially posing a lethal threat. And the moment that it takes to wait to find out, like that moment that I just took, means I'm dead and you're alive. And I would hope that the training that my colleagues have received ensures that when the commissioner sends them out to do the work that nobody else wants to do in society, to go and stand between the gunmen and the community, I would hope that they would use their training to go back home to their families.
Do you listen, SSP Brooks, to the comments of those who have a serious problem with the number of fatal shootings? And if you listen, what do you take from what you hear?
I listen to the comments, and what concerns me is the way in which persons they express that they are appalled and they say it's alarming and all sorts of similar adjectives. For instance, a human rights group may express alarm and it's appalling and it's signaling that we're moving back to the dark days. I have never heard them one time tell the criminals, do not rise your weapons at the police. I've never heard them engage in a public education campaign about safe surrender. What constitutes a safe surrender? I've never heard it, right? I would process those comments a lot better if that kind of behavior change campaign, I saw that, but I'm not in the position of telling them what they are to do with their funding, and neither are they in the position to tell me what to do operationally.
There are many things I personally have taken from reading a recent report produced by the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, CAPRI, Hits and Misses, looking at women involved in violent crimes. And they published a table showing year over year, up to 2020, I think it was a 10-year look, of the number of men and women, the hundreds of men who've been arrested for murder and arrested for shootings by the police over time. Hundreds year by year, not hundreds cumulatively, but hundreds each year, which does suggest that there are a lot of people who are taken in by the police when they go for them, because I would expect that the overwhelming majority of these people don't walk into a station and say, Sarge, I hear that I'm wanted for murder, here I am.
No.
So the police go, so is there something for you to do though, SSP Brooks, in the messaging to say, well, look at the hundreds of people that we take in and look at the few that choose to challenge us and who come out on the wrong end of it, to balance the conversation.
But we engage in this conversation, and we engage in that exact conversation with the stakeholders who go out after that conversation has been had and say the complete opposite. And so it must be then a concern that if I take you into my confidence and I explain to you what is happening, it must, so I know that you know, and you know that I know that you know, then when you go out and you are completely contrary, well then you leave me to interpret what you are saying in a particular way. Understand, and I want your viewers to appreciate that the police would rather not have one fatal shooting. The police would rather not lose anyone operationally, because every fatal shooting requires administrative review, requires an investigation, and the result of which is that that person, we do not have them available to work. I would rather we don't have one. I would rather we arrest and bring in every single one. We have shown the data time and time again. Over 600 persons last year charged for murder last year. There are persons like, for instance, a Patterson, who they were charged for murder before they were charged for murder the last time, and they still got bail. That's a conversation. I'm not going to go down that avenue this evening. But they were charged for murder before. And maybe if they were behind bars, they wouldn't have been able to do some of the murders that they were done before. Look at Patterson, who was taken into custody on February 2 this year because intelligence told us that he and his cronies were going to do something. He was interviewed, he was released, pending further investigation. Further investigation happened. This is the same person who we took in, had conversations with. This is the same person who was reporting on condition of bail. And you're telling me that all of a sudden we now have decided that his time is up? It's ridiculous. We would much rather bring him in, and if we need to charge him again, we charge him again, because we have charged him, for instance, many times for various things since 2010. We have demonstrated an intention and a capacity to do so. If you do not threaten the police with lethal force, we believe that force must be proportional. So if you don't put your hands on the police, and they won't have to put their hands on you, for instance. Don't, in the same way, if somebody hits you, you shouldn't shoot them. But if somebody threatens you with lethal force, force must be proportionate.
As we run out of time, does it bother, I'm on borrowed time, does it bother the JCF, does it bother the men and women on the front line that people are criticizing them for using force when they are met with the potential of deadly force and deadly force while executing warrants?
When you work in law enforcement, you do a job, you go out every day, the intention is not to be liked. Democracies are protected by people who go and do their job and preserve the rule of law regardless of whether they are liked. I think the most important thing is for the men and women of the constabulary to know that they are properly trained and that the high command is giving them the confidence they need to do their job properly so that when they are in situations, they do not hesitate and make mistakes.
Hear you on that. Hear you on that. Senior communications strategist in Jamaica Constabulary Force, Senior Superintendent Dennis Brooks, with the word on this issue of police fatal killings. And the word is gunmen. If you are a criminal suspect, the police go for you. When they come, go quietly. If you resist, then any number can play, as we say here in Jamaica. That's my time. Nika Lewis is standing by with the news at 7.